So tonight, the Toronto Raptors will play the Milwaukee Bucks game one at the Pfizer Forum Arena. And as you can see, Toronto are 6.5 points as an underdog. And that's to be expected. You know, they're going up against a team that in the regular season had the best record and had the #1 defense, who also demolished Detroit and, you know, kind of backed up their play style and dominance by, gentlemen sweeping the Boston Celtics, which was a very good defensive team. Now, a couple of things I want to get into about this series, and the first one's going to be Nick Nurse. Now, Nick Nurse had a very polarizing series against Philadelphia, and I would say throughout the playoffs he's also been like kind of up and down. He hasn't been like trash the whole playoffs, but in some key moments this man has just turned into the white version of Dwayne Casey, like just straight up awful timeouts and failure to make adjustments in time. Now, I'm not going to say he didn't make them, because he obviously did. It's just he made them like probably a game late or so. And so far, it hasn't cost him a series, but it definitely has cost him, a game or two. Now, you look at the other side. Milwaukee has Mike Budenholzer, who he himself, in the games that I've watched, he doesn't really like to make too many changes if things are working. So he's kind of like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. However, with that said, I do think that the coaching advantage does go to Milwaukee. Even though they have arguably a more talented roster currently, like if we're looking at the rosters and how they've played in the playoffs so far, Milwaukee's starting five has done better overall than Toronto's starting five. And they have a deeper bench too, mainly because they actually have eight reliable guys in Pat Connaughton and Malcolm Brogdon, who's not even supposed to be on the bench. But they have these players that they can constantly rely on. Like Connaughton, one bad game against Boston, rest of the series he came out, to play. Now for Toronto, you look at our bench, and our bench has been MIA this entire series, right? Against Philadelphia. They were not there. Like, I guess you could call Serge Ibaka a bench player, because that's what his role has kind of transitioned into. But other than Ibaka, who came up huge in Game 7, where's the rest, right? Like, bench depth was sacrificed at the trade deadline to acquire Marc Gasol. You gave up DeLon Wright. You gave up CJ Miles, who arguably was kind of garbage anyway. But, you gave up bodies that you could slot into, fill minutes when needed and give your starters a rest. Now, also, OG Anunoby is gone from the lineup as well, so that kind of makes the situation for depth with the Raptors a little bit worse. Norman Powell, I'm still waiting for him to kind of like officially establish a consistent presence in these playoffs. He was just kind of average against Philadelphia. He didn't have many minutes. Fred VanVleet, he was terrible. Like, I don't care that he had a couple, like 2 good games. He was awful in the Philadelphia series, like straight awful. And he struggled, like a lot of the bench, struggled with the length of the 76ers. So what this means is there's a really good chance he's going to have an even harder time against the Bucks. Now, the Bucks don't exactly like to drive to the rim, they except for Giannis. So maybe that play style will make Fred a little bit more effective, but I doubt it. Every time he's gonna be on, he'll be locked down by someone like Bledsoe or even Brogdon for that matter. And I just do not see Fred having a good time. He'll have to play with Lowry, and if he does, that's an extremely tiny lineup that is very likely to be exploited. So there is a problem, an issue in particular at that. Who's gonna come in to give Lowry rest? I personally still think it should be Patrick McCaw, but we will have to wait and see after tonight's game. Now, the second thing that I want to get, well, not even the second thing, but another thing I want to address about this series is going to be the best players for each team. You have the Claw up against the Freak. I do not think they will be guarding each other. I think Toronto will opt for Siakam onto Giannis, because that's what they've done traditionally. I think that's only going to change if if they get slammed in a game and they're forced to make that adjustment. I don't see them making a preemptive adjustment, right? So Siakam on Giannis, I think Giannis is gonna get his points regardless. But Siakam with Gasol and possibly Ibaka help defending, I think that could be a good way to kind of shut down Giannis. We saw Al Horford successfully do it in one game. And, there are a lot of other reasons why I think that the Celtics were not able to actually get to him defensively in the games after. But the Raptors kind of need to study what Al Horford did and have their bigs replicate that. With that said, though, I don't think rebounding is going to be much of an issue this series like it was against Philadelphia. And the reason why is because this entire play style of Milwaukee is basically 4 players out on the perimeter, 1 man driving in. So I do realize that Giannis is freakishly long and athletic, but if 2 people cannot box him out and get a rebound over him, you're gonna have that's on the team. That's on like the Raptors. Like you should not really have much of an excuse to not be able to get the rebound unless like someone from Milwaukee other than Giannis is in the paint. And you look at their offense. No, only Giannis is driving in. He's relying on everybody else to, hit their threes. And if they don't, well, okay, you have 4 people that can now run back on transition. And Giannis can cover the court in, 2-3 dribbles? So, yeah, rebounds, at least defensive rebounds, I don't think they're going to be as much of a problem. I could be completely wrong, but I just don't think the Raptors are going to struggle as mightily as they did, within the first 5 games before they finally went to a lineup where they could hold their own on the glass. The other thing that I want to get to is OG Anunoby and Malcolm Brogdon. Now, there were some reports on ESPN and Reddit and, TSN or whatever that said that OG Anunoby was coming back this series. And I think he does come back, but some people were like so optimistic because he was listed as not injured on tonight's game or roster or whatever. And I think realistically we can expect OG to be back by game 6. I honestly don't think he comes back any earlier, and the reason is last week Nick Nurse basically told reporters he's not even close. Like, he's back, but he's not close. Like, he's gonna need some time, right? And if he's not, like, if you take the tweet yesterday, or not the tweet, but the snippet yesterday of today's today's game that he's no longer listed as injury as like a timetable, then you can safely say that he'll be in a situation where, okay, well, he's going to be cheering on with the bench, but on the bench, not playing. But he's going to need some time to kind of get his reps in and to, really, really find, his conditioning and athleticism before he's able to step on the court. The same thing goes with Malcolm Brogdon. I don't think Brogdon is fully available until game 5. Like, I know he was back, in that closeout game against Boston, but let's be real. How many minutes did he really play? Not too many. I think Budenholzer is going to have the luxury of not having to play Brogdon because he probably is looking at Toronto's bench lineup and is like, okay, we got Fred VanVleet, Norman Powell, and Serge Ibaka. And 2 of these players have not really caused any problems in the playoffs so far. Now, Norm has had a history of being clutch in the playoffs. I'm not going to discount what he did in Indiana, especially not what he did in Milwaukee. Casey putting him over JV and Norm basically winning a game. Like, I'm not going to discount that. But, I think this play style of the Bucks, along with this coach, is completely different. So I don't think he'll be able to go off for 20 plus like he did 2 years ago against them in the second round. Or first round. It was one of the 2, yeah, first round. I just don't see it happening. Quite frankly, I think he'll be limited. This is gonna be an interesting situation about the bench. Bottom line, it's gonna be mainly the starting lineup that has to take over. Now, normally I always say that bench depth doesn't mean jack shit. That's like somewhat of an exaggeration. What I really mean is that it's not as huge as someone would think. Like, it's good if you have 8 guys reliable. That's wonderful. Like 8 reliable guys you can throw in. But, we saw what happened last year of Toronto against the Cavs. You had an amazing bench. Your bench was the best in the league, and you still got thrashed, right? It really is your starting 5 that's going to take this one home, at least for Toronto. Toronto's going to have to rely heavily on their starting 5, and this is where I have some concerns because the starting 5 for Toronto needs a third option to score. You cannot rely on a two-headed juggernaut. That's not going to work. We saw that in the Philadelphia series. The Sixers were able to successfully, over the course of several games, make Siakam more and more uncomfortable. I know he still got his 20 points, right? I know he still got, except for the last game. But, man, you could argue that was the pressure of Game 7, right? But, you could just tell it was getting more and more difficult. And Siakam was, after Game 4, a lot of his points came from the foul line. It wasn't those drives or those spin moves to, the bucket or his jump shot at the, top of the key. I still don't think that was, he's still learning how to do that. But regardless, he was relying on drawing fouls as the, series came to a conclusion. And I feel like with the Bucks, they have a blueprint on how to stop Siakam. They look at, even going back to the Orlando Magic, they can take, film from that, but mainly they're going to focus on film from the Philadelphia series and be like, okay, this is how we stop Siakam, and this is how we make life extremely difficult for Kawhi. And for Kawhi, you got to imagine somebody needs to be there to help this guy. Because after Game 4 of the Philadelphia series, the ease in scoring from him was gone. Like, they really found a way to kind of just, that or it was a combination of fatigue. But, the 76ers found a way to actually make it extremely difficult for him to get his points. And I know he had 41 in Game 7, but he took 39 shots. That's awful efficiency. That shot doesn't go in, we're talking a completely different story, right? If the Raptors lose that game because the shot doesn't go in and they lose in right overtime, the story's going to be Sixers found a way in Game 7 to shut down Kawhi Leonard. That's a story, right? But, yeah, there needs to be that third option. And, it needs to be there. It needs to come now. The shooting for Toronto has been too polarizing and too inconsistent. It needs to show up this series. Because if Danny Green or Marc Gasol do not apply, do not contribute at least 14 points a game, Toronto is going home in 5. And Danny Green disappeared in Philadelphia series. He was, I don't know what happened to him. Gasol, he passed the ball like a hot potato. Listen, we already have a Kyle Lowry, and Lowry, at least, is going to be able to get the calls for the charges. Is going to be able to do a lot of the deflections, right? Gasol, he tries to take a charge. Man, more often than not, he gets called for an offensive foul. Or defensive foul, right? Or a blocking foul or whatever. Lowry's lost his shooting touch, I think. Or, if anything, his shooting touch is more inconsistent than Gasol. I don't know what happened to Gasol's post game. Maybe he hasn't practiced it enough. But he needs to be aggressive. Shoot that three ball, because I trust him to shoot the 3 ball right now more than I trust Fred VanVleet to be efficient in the game. That's Danny Green, please find your shot. Gasol, if you have to take it to the rim, spin around jumper, do that. Just find a way to contribute. And the Bucks only have to guard 2 people. They got 3 other people, right? That can either be help defense or just chill and get on a fast break. That cannot happen, right? Now, if you look at the side of Milwaukee, you had that second option in Chris Middleton, in Brook Lopez, in Nikola Mirotic. All these shooters, right? They're going to get you at least 10 points apiece. And I don't think the Raptors' defense against that is going to be as effective as it was against Philadelphia. Philadelphia relied a lot more on, on driving, cuts, that kind of stuff than Milwaukee does. Milwaukee is entirely if Giannis can't get it in, okay, hit a 3. Toronto's going to be having to run the Milwaukee players off the 3-point line constantly. And unlike Philadelphia, you have way more people on Milwaukee that can make their shots. So overall, if I give my prediction for this series, I'm going to say this. My brain, logically speaking, based on what I have been shown, is saying Bucks in 6 or Bucks win this. Basically, I don't really know the number yet. I can't make too much of a statement until Game 2 is played, because that's when a series, in my opinion, really starts. But if I'm just going off of what I've seen so far in the past 2 rounds, I'm gonna have to say that, and you can argue that Detroit was kind of just not even in it compared to Orlando, and that Boston was dysfunctional, yada yada yada. But based on what I've seen so far in the games that have been played, I'm going to have to say, and as much as this pisses me off, my brain is saying Bucks in 6 or 7. But my heart wants to say Raps in 7, but we'll have to wait and see. Right now, my brain says Bucks in 6 or 7 because I do not think Kawhi is going to be able to get that offensive contribution. He hasn't gotten it consistently throughout the playoffs. The only time he gets it, he's gotten it once, and that was that Game 5 in Toronto. That's the only time he got that. And, that's great and all, but it's only one time. You need to do this consistently. And in the other games where he got the help, he was great. Game 5 is the only game where he did not shoot. Well, no, he shot well, but he didn't get above 35 points. The rest of the team showed up, collectively. That's the only time. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting series. I will see you guys after game 1.